Hey guys, welcome back. Today we have a presentation for you guys that I've put together. I've tried to simplify this as much as possible while adding in all the information to help you assess what you should do with your horse and what leg protection to use when competing. So we're going to get into this, and at the end I'm going to talk about what my personal protocol is. However, with every horse is different. Some protocols can be different. So this is only a guide for you to look into what you think may be best for your horse. So this is not a do as I say type of video. This is only to help educate you and think of other ways that you can do to help your horse in competing and keeping them safe. There are lots of different types of leg protection for many different reasons. The most controversial is probably when competing, exercise, and pleasure riding. Why we use them, how to use them, what to use, and can they hurt our horses? So let's get into the types of protection. We have bell boots, sports medicine boots, also known as SMB boots, fetlock boots, tendon boots, aka open front boots, polo wraps, skid boots, splint boots, aka brushing boots. So we're going to go over the description of what they do. Bell boots protect from overreaching. This is when the horse steps on their front hooves, on the back of their front hooves with their back hooves, causing an injury called clipping. Your horse has also been said to most likely keep their front shoes on if you wear boots or bell boots. That's kind of a every horse to themselves type of situation, but a lot of people have good luck with that. So sports medicine boots, these boots provide an all-around heavy-duty protection for the leg. These are intended for strenuous events to provide protection to the fetlocks and lower legs during work. Fetlock boots, these boots are used on the hind legs to prevent fetlocks from catching each other. Tendon boots, aka open front boots, they are to protect the leg and tendons from the back feet, clipping them or brushing them. The boots are often left open in the front to avoid knocking a rail, such as things like jumping. Polo wraps are usually made with fleece and polyester blend. Polo wraps are usually made with fleece and polyester blends and usually have some stretch. They protect from the minor bumps and scrapes. Skid boots provides protection for the back of the fetlock on the hind legs of the horses for horses who are required to perform maneuvers such as sitting on their haunches and sliding on their back legs. Splint boots, aka brushing boots. These boots prevent the horse's hind legs from brushing together and mainly serve to protect the splint bone. So let's get into some research and articles that I have researched to put this together. These are going to be the newer research and the most, and all the things that I thought were important to consider when we talk about leg protection. If there are some research studies out there that maybe I have missed because I am human, I would like for you to comment those in the comments and apply a link and things like that so other people can see those as well. And maybe I will even edit my presentation along the way as we find things together so that way we can properly educate everyone. Like I said, this is a guide and these are just things that I found with people that I've talked to, such as trainers and vets and things like that. So these are the main articles, and I only did a couple for each talking point as well because, man, we could go all day about talking about all this research. So it is always important to remember that with studies, we can always learn more. However, it is hard to find funds for the studies, and there are always more research that can be done. These are some of the studies and articles I have found that I will provide a link for you in the description. I'll try to just provide all these studies in the description, but I will have a link to the actual presentation should you want to see that. So some of the talking points we'll go over, and then we're going to kind of talk about them, but we'll go to what have we learned by looking at those studies and articles. Leg injuries are the most common cause of equine lameness. If your horse is working at high rates of speed or they're at risk of interference, they could have minor to very serious injuries. Overheating of tendons can cause very serious injuries. Conformation plays a big role on how much risk for leg interference. Proper nutrition improves performance. Legs and wraps not fitted properly can cause problems from rubbing to discomfort and even damaging tendons. So we'll go into when to use what. So this is around about what you will see throughout the whole community. This is not nitpicking anything, but kind of around about who uses what boots for what and what they're intended for. So bell boots are best worn in almost all events due to the possibility of overreaching for the hind limbs in almost all events. During or depending on the horse's conformation, many may have a tendency to clip more than others. SMBs can be seen in a lot of events, especially speed events and events where there are demanding maneuvers made. They offer some support and best prevent interference injuries. Some brands can be heavy or heat up the leg, and also important to remember that while there's been studies done to show support of SMB boots, SMB boots have not been shown, or any studies that I can find, to support the leg after trotting. So they've been shown to support during a walk, during a trot, but nothing during a lope or a run or canter or anything like that. Have I missed that study? Possibly, but I can't find one that shows any support past a trot. So do keep that in mind as well. Fetlock boots are seen a lot in jumping events, along with tendon open front boots. They prevent interference well, but offer no support. The front of the boots are open to allow the horse to feel the jump. Tendon open front boots have been used in young horses in training while they find their feet where they're supposed to be during training. Polos can be used in lots of different events. They offer no support and little protection against interference. They are likely to heat up the leg. They can be good for low impact rides or low risk rides of interference. Skid boots are often used in reining, cutting, or roping events where the horse is required to sit or slide on his haunches. This protects the hind fetlocks from interference or abrasions from the footing. Splint or brushing boots are seen in a lot of English riding and colt starting, much like the tendon and open front boots. So last we have tips and how-tos. I have provided some links to SMB, splint boots, open front boots, and fetlock boots on how to put those on. I have reviewed these videos. These are how I would exactly put these on and how I recommend, everybody to put those on. They're the correct way to use them. These are all professionals in these videos. Some brands do fit differently. It is important to check with what brand you are purchasing to see how to correctly fit them. There are lots of brands out there to use, and I recommend that you look into the brand before purchasing it. And some tips that we can do to help our horses along the way is to keep them fit and not overweight. That's just a whole story in itself, but helping them take that extra weight off of their limbs helps a lot and improves their health. Warming them up properly before performance and cooling them down properly after performance plays a huge role, and to do it properly. Keeping the legs from overheating, such as removing the leg protection when possible, waiting to put them on until the last possible minute. Proper care after performance, such as cold hosing the legs or ice boots or poultice or rubs, things like that. We'll get more into that just a minute. Strengthening the legs with proper exercises, which we should be doing that for every portion of our horse's body to give them the best benefit of performance. And then, as always, we all know good nutrition promotes a healthy horse. So healthy bones, healthy ligaments, healthy foot, all those things. No hoof, no horse, that type of situation. So it's good to have all these into play. I think when people think about leg protection, they also don't really think about under the protection of whatever boot they're using. Performance really plays a big key, and to have that protection is also to have good nutrition, good training, and all sorts of things like that. I think we tend to forget that. So here's the thing. What I do with my horse, so I know we said some things like using rubs and poultice and things like that for aftercare. I personally, so there's not a lot of studies that have even really showed that poultice or certain rubs have shown improvement. Now, there are some out there. I'm not saying that they're all that way, but there are some out there. But there's a lot of people who do not believe in using rubs or things like that because there's not a lot that says, oh, this is actually helping your horse. I personally like to put them on just because it makes me feel better. But also what I do like to do, because ice boots are really expensive, and while I would love to have a pair, not everybody can afford them. So I love the Drawed Out brand rubs as a massage therapist. And so what I like to do is get a bottle of gel and keep it in the fridge. Or if I'm going to a race or something, I put it in a small cooler to keep it really cool. So that way when I get done cold hosing my horse's leg, then I can apply that cool gel on there. So it's not necessarily really the gel itself that I'm focused on, but adding that cool effect to cool that horse's leg down. So things like that are really good to think about when performing. There's a lot of types of tricks out there that you can do with things like that. I would love to own a pair of ice boots. I don't have that kind of money though. So every horse is a little different. That's why this is just a guide for you to understand what may be best for your horse. Typically, and especially because of age differences, you know, I have seen and used open front boots or tendon boots on colts because it doesn't offer support. You don't always have to have support on your horse's leg. Do not get hung up on that. It is very important for our horses to learn how to maneuver their legs and where to place them and things like that, especially as like colts, when you're starting them and things, they have to learn where to put their feet. And to do that, it's often best to do that without support so they have a feel of their body. So I like to use open front boots, or otherwise known as tendon boots, or also the brushing boots. I've seen people use those as well, because typically those two types of boots, they can have a really hard outer shell that helps prevent from injury, but doesn't keep it doesn't support, so it keeps them from still feeling their legs and things like that. So it is very important, especially when you're exercising your horses, to help strengthening their leg and all those sorts of things, to also remember to do these things without leg protection as well, or without support, I should say. So that way they can strengthen their leg all to themselves. They're not really having that effect of support to change however they're walking, maneuvering, or whatever. So those are things that I really live by, is when I'm exercising and things like that, unless I'm doing just really hardcore drills, I typically try to either use no leg protection or very light leg protection, such as open front boots. I typically always, if I'm going anything, if I'm making turns or maneuvers, or I am flat out just like loping or running that day, such as breezing, I always put bell boots on, just because, you know, that's just kind of always bell boots. So, but if I'm like leisurely ride, you know, just walking, things like that, even though clipping can still happen, I personally don't always put them on, but I do always put them on when I think about it, especially if there is more of a risk of clipping. So with that being said, every horse is different. Every conformation of the horse is different. So it is very important to know what horse you are sitting on and how they move their legs. Are they more at risk of interference in the front legs or in the back legs, or from the back to the front? You know, what type of scenario it is that their movement is, because we can't fully just rearrange our horse's structure and get them to move the way we would like them to. So we have to make these changes to protect whatever scenario could happen. So with that being said, I know a lot of people who use and love polo wraps. I am one to a certain extent. So how do I pick between polo wraps or SMB boots? It really depends on the horse. As said, what is the risk? So we know polo wraps don't offer as much protection as SMB boots would. So the guess really is, what horse am I riding, and also what environment it is. If it is raining or muddy and my polos may get wet, I typically don't like to wear those, because most polo wraps, I'm not going to say all, they have come out since I was younger with so many different types of brands and polo wraps. So when I say you need to look into what you're buying to, you really need to look into it, because they've come out with some polo wraps that don't heat up your leg like your traditional ones do. So those are also things to think about. Polo wraps typically get a lot hotter too, depending on what they're made out of. So if they get wet, they get really heavy. So it's also the same with some SMB boots too. Some wick off the water really well. Some, they get really heavy as well. So that comes into that extra weight that we may or may not have if it is raining and things like that. I've even gone as far as, if it's been a little muddy, but the ground underneath has been pretty somewhat stable, and I haven't been seeing a whole lot of horses fall or at risk of anything such as like a major like sliding off the barrel or something like that. I've even just thrown on some bell boots and just taken it nice and easy. Maybe not like a complete competitive run, just letting my horse just have at it. I may play it safe if the ground is very iffy, and not put on leg protection. But, to each their own, and horse. So, but that is typically how I choose between the two. Another thing is too, how late are you to the race? I've been super late and I haven't had time to put on polo wraps. So, I usually just throw on some boots and get after it, because, not everybody is good at planning on time things. So, but it's also kind of a time thing. What do you have time for? I love to warm up first and then put my boots on right after whatever drag that I'm in. So if it drags and I'm the third person, as soon as that drag is done, that first person goes out, my boots go on. Or, if they're dragging and I'm the first one out, while they're dragging, I put my boots on. So literally try to put my boots on right before I run, as close as possible as I can get it anyway. And then as soon as I get out of that arena and I get off, those boots come off. I do not want to risk any type of tendon injury due to overheating. So I try to keep them off and take them off as soon as possible. I'm trying to think of everything else that really could play a role. Like I said, the open front boots, I have seen Western riders. I've seen cutting horse or even pleasure people who use those boots, especially with starting colts and things like that, because it offers a lot of protection, but it also doesn't have that support for them, because that is also makes them, adding that support can help, but if they don't know how to maneuver their own legs, then adding that support when they're not ready can also change how they walk and things like that. So things like that are good to remember. So another thing too, as well, is some of you may see that people put on front boots, but then put on the polos on the back. That can also be due to the level of interference. They may not have a high level of interference in the back. So using polos is just fine if you don't have that high of a risk. Now, of course, when we're talking about all this, anything can happen, so you can put on polos and have a huge accident, and the polos and the boots probably could have offered more protection than the polos could at the time, but we can't predict those things. So we can only do our best in guessing what we think is going to be best for this certain horse that is running that day. I also try to, when I exhibition, if I'm making a just cruise through run, I may only put on bell boots, or I may put on polos, depending on the horse. If I am making a competitive run, I try to do my best at thinking, okay, we have low interference in the back, I can put on polos. I will put on boots in the front, or I may put on polos in the front, depending on that level of interference as well. So I typically also, when we're cooling down, we'll go back to that for a minute. I love cold hosing afterwards, and I try to do it for a very lengthy period of time. Now, I'm not talking like hours, but like trying to evenly cool down each leg. Hey guys, so sorry that the video cut off. I think I pretty much got everything said that I needed to say. My phone died, of course. I did not check the battery before I started filming, but at least we got all the video in pretty much. I tried to think of everything that I could to put in. Of course, if anyone has any tips, tricks, advice, studies or anything that I missed that y'all think should be in there, do comment below so everybody can see those comments and things like that. Really good comments that I think are very beneficial, I will pin or do whatever, or put into the presentation, whatever. But again, thank you guys. I hope this helps and kind of gathers a good information about maybe what you should do with your horse and things like that. So I hope it helped. And again, I'm sorry for the video cutting out, but I think I pretty much covered everything that I had to say, and we'll see y'all next time. Bye.